Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
The opening half hour brought to you by our good friends at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, best in new inventory, great pre-owned inventory with the Sunbury Motors guarantee, and a terrific service department, whether it happens to be quick lane inspections, routine, difficult. They handle it all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. One of the true legends passed away over the weekend, D. Wayne Lukas. And joining us now, Dick Jerardi. And DJ sent me the article that he wrote, which was incredible. DJ, how do you put into the proper words what Lukas meant to the sport and how he humanized the sport?
Right. So for the people that don't follow horse racing, Steve, in the 1980s and 1990s, he was to horse racing what Michael Jordan was to basketball. He was just that big. He won his first Preakness in 1980 with a horse named Codex. And the amazing thing about Wayne is he didn't keep winning at the level he did in the 80s and the 90s when at one point he won 6 Triple Crown races in a row with 4 different horses. But he stayed around for another 20 years and was still out there. And he won his first Preakness in 1980 and his last one in 2024. So he was 44 when he won his first and 88 or 44 years later when he won his last. So the longevity, the fact that he, in the 80s and 90s, when very few horses left their own area, he was the first guy that put horses on a plane. If he thought the better race for a horse was in New York and his horse was in California, he put him on a plane and run him in a stake race in New York. They actually used to call it D. Wayne off the plane, like, go to the windows and start betting. So there was that. He brought a completely different style. He would show up on race day dressed like a Hollywood actor, and he'd have the aviator shades, and he attracted big money. His first really big money client was Gene Klein, of course, that San Diego Chargers, and Winning Colors, who won the '88 Derby. And he would do things that were very unconventional. He would run fillies against colts, and he had the last filly to win the Derby in Winning Colors, as I said, in 1988. And yeah, just an amazing career. And Steve, as I let off the story, I saw him at the Preakness. I spent a little time with him 2 days before the Preakness. He had a horse in the Preakness this year, and he would have turned 90 right around Labor Day, and he was still out there until he just couldn't be out there anymore.
If I read it correctly, I believe he started in quarter horses and then moved from there. And I think Bob Baffert also started in quarter horses. How did that set him up because he did that?
So, yeah, that's right. And I think it gave he and Baffert a unique look at thoroughbreds when they moved over. Their whole game, Steve, is speed. They're looking for fast horses that can get near the lead. And how many times have you and I talked about that in basketball, play with the lead? In horse racing, it's even more important because horses that get behind and get dirt thrown in their face, they often get discouraged. So quarter horse is the races there is 440 yards. It's all speed. I mean, it's just one, just get out and go as fast as you can. And Wayne grew up in Wisconsin around horses. Actually was a high school basketball coach for quite a while, coached for the University of Wisconsin grad. And he became a horse guy just because he'd been around horses. And then he got into training quarter horses, won all the big races. Had a horse called Dash for Cash, who was one of the legendary quarter horses. And then transitioned to thoroughbreds in the late 70s, and it was around for half a century. And Stevie's the only guy in the Thoroughbred Hall of Fame and the Quarter Horse Hall of Fame.
And there's also, like with any great coach has people who then become part of the legacy because they go on to greatness themselves. He has a long list of people that work with him that are now great trainers in their own right.
There's no question his coaching tree is unparalleled in the history of the sport. And again, because he had horses all over the country. He'd have a division in California, Kentucky, New York, New Jersey. He needed somebody to run him, right? He couldn't be – Wayne's base for the longest time was in California until he moved to the Midwest and Kentucky later on. And his number one assistant in New York was Todd Pletcher. And, of course, Todd has gone on to break all the records. He holds his horses have won more money than any trainer in history. And one of the reasons Wayne doesn't hold that record is the money just wasn't as big in the 80s and 90s as it is now. And Todd Pletcher's number one assistant for years was Michael McCarthy, who, of course, had journalism in the Triple Crown races this year. So I think, as I wrote in there, in horse racing terms, Wayne would be Michael McCarthy's grandsire.
Right.
And he's got a number of other great trainers, Mike Baker, Kieran McLaughlin, Del Stewart. I mean, they're just everywhere, all over the country, the Wayne tree. And sadly, Steve, probably his best assistant was his son, Jeff, who was basically responsible for a lot of things. And Jeff got run over by a horse named Tabasco Cat at Santa Anita in the early 90s. And was never really the same, and was able to live out, but died young, died in his 50s, and that's the one that, the what if. And I don't know that Wayne ever got over it, but and I knew Jeff well. Jeff was a hell of a guy, and Tabasco Cat, after all that, ended up winning the Preakness and the Belmont the next year.
That's right. I remember all that, which is remarkable. When you're 89. And you're in it on an everyday basis. I mean, this is obviously conjecture. Well, what do you think it did to his quality of life because he was so involved in it and loved it so much?
It's a really good question, Steve. And I think there were a number of great stories that for people to read that have been written this last week. And obviously, we knew last Sunday when they put out the release saying Wayne was going to home hospice and they weren't going to try to treat his heart condition. That it probably wasn't going to be long. There's people that are singularly dedicated to their craft. That was all he did. It was his everything, which is one of the reasons he was divorced 4 times. His most recent wife, Laurie, who was with him for quite a long time, I think he helped mellow Wayne toward the end. Yeah. But, Steve, this is a wild story. 10 years ago, he's at Parks for the PA Derby, and he doesn't show up the day of the race, which is like, what? And we were all concerned about him. It turned out his heart, and I don't know if this is ultimately what led to the problems that caused his demise here, but his heart was, he was racing. He was doing all kind of things, like the kind of things where you're supposed to go to the hospital. Yeah. Except he didn't go. He was going to get in a van and ride home to Kentucky. Finally, he was talked into going to the hospital near the track, and he went, ended up he had a number of bypasses and stents, and a pacemaker put in. And I went to visit him in the hospital the next day. I said, "Wait, when was the last time you saw a doctor?" He said he thought it was 60 years ago. He said, "This is when he was 80, right, or 79."
Oh,
I said, "Come on, man, what are you doing?" But whatever they did, they gave him another 10 years. And I will say this: every time I saw him, Steve, maybe up into this year's Preakness, when you could see, I didn't know this was going to happen. You could see he was a little more frail. He certainly mentally, he was as sharp as ever, but he was using a cane, and he never said anything. But my guess is this didn't happen like in the last week. My guess is it had been brewing for a while.
Yeah. Well, for him, what was it like to coach humans, which he did, and to essentially coach jockeys and horses, and why were horses more rewarding to him?
Yeah, it's another really good question. I think he just wanted to be around animals, right? I mean, he's certainly a good people person. Sure. Although his personality changed dramatically in the last 20 years when he became everybody's favorite uncle and grandfather. He was pretty irascible for the first 20, 25 years of his career, because it took him a while to win the Derby, and people say, "Oh, he's like, Luke, you can't win the big one." I mean, we've all been through that before. And so he would get angry, and he did some things he probably should have done, probably ran some horses in places shouldn't have been run, and he would take offense at it. But over time, it was interesting when his owners started to pass away. A lot of his owners were older than he was. Then all of a sudden, he didn't have the kind of horses he had before, but he still wanted to be at the track. He just liked the action. And his personality, again, he was always quotable. It wasn't like he wouldn't answer the phone or he wouldn't talk to you, but it just softened over time. And he was, and I pointed out in the story that I wrote, we interviewed him a couple days before last year's Pennsylvania Derby, and it was astonishing. Steve, he was 80. He had just turned 89. And it was like, really? I mean, I noticed no difference in the guy I knew 40 years ago when he first came around the track, or when I first noticed him when he first became a Triple Crown player. Mentally, nothing had ever changed. And it's kind of cool for Pennsylvania that his last Grade 1 race is going to be the 2024 Pennsylvania Derby that he won with Seize the Gray, the horse that won the Preakness last year.
Yeah, and I was about to ask that question, was about the role that the Pennsylvania Derby Parks played at points in his career.
Yeah, I tell you what, he really liked it for a couple of reasons. Mostly there was a bonus for any horse that won a Triple Crown race or the Travers or the Haskell. If all the horse had to do was come out of the starting gate, and the trainer got $50,000. And Wayne did like the casino. He liked the slot machines. So, he definitely liked to come to Parks. He would come even when he wasn't getting the bonus, but, he definitely liked it. And another thing that probably needs to be pointed out, and I hadn't thought of this, but my friend Jay Prittman wrote this in a racing forum, the Triple Crown has always been big in horse racing, but it got way bigger in the 80s and 90s because of Wayne Lukas. Yeah. It was just such a thing that all of a sudden he started, as we said, he won 6 Triple Crown races with 4 different horses. It was kind of like the Tiger Slam, right? It was the Wayne Slam. It was the Wayne Crown. He didn't win 3 in succession in the same year like Baffert did twice, but I think he really aided, certainly Churchill Downs, which has been his home track for a while now, they really benefited by the presence of Wayne Lukas in the 80s and 90s. And obviously the Triple Crown over the last 25 years has just become bigger and bigger and bigger. That's why when Wayne first got there, and this is when I first went to Churchill Downs, the only thing you could see at that racetrack from the backstretch was the twin spires, and now you can barely see them at all because they're dwarfed by all the buildings. Right.
No, exactly. It's been a long time since I've been to Churchill Downs. And I remember that's what stuck out to me was seeing the twin spires. So everybody has their own personality in the sport. You've talked about Wayne Lukas's personality. Baffert has his personality. Pletcher does. Obviously, you introduced me to Michael McCarthy. So as time went, you say he mellowed a lot. What was it about his previous personality before he mellowed that drew people to him?
He would say stuff, quotable.
Okay.
He spoke in complete sentences. He was obviously a very well-educated guy. And you ask him a good question, he'd give you a good answer, insightful, and occasionally combative, which is fine. It's part of the deal. Like, again, when you question him, there was I think a couple different people mentioned in their stories. I'm going to lose track of the year, but he had this streak, Steve, of running a horse in the Derby, like maybe 20 years in a row, and he was proud of it. Well, to keep the streak going, he ran this horse called Deeds Not Words, who had no business being in the race, and he took a lot of heat that week, especially in the Louisville papers. Pat Forty was working there then, Rick Bozich. I mean, guys, serious people. And Wayne, in fact, I didn't realize this. Pat wrote about it last week in SI.com that Wayne wanted to have a fight with him. Because he was basically trashing Wayne, but that was him. And one of his best buddies was Bobby Knight, and of course Bloomington back in the day, not far from Louisville. And I was there one year when he brought Knight around. It might have, in fact, you know what? It might have been '87 after they won the Keith Smart title. I think Knight came down that year. I remember talking to him about basketball. But yeah, they were buddies. But yeah, he could get angry again, which is fine. That's part of it.
When he mellowed, you talk about interviewing me. You saw no difference in him. When he mellowed, was he the same interview or was he a better interview?
I thought he was always good. I think he was more accessible, and you never felt like you were in any kind of a combat toward the end. There were times, I can remember some years when I went to the Derby when he had some long shots. I just didn't bother with him. I just said, I don't need the aggravation. I'll go cover what I think are the stories. Sure. And, of course, one of those years he won the Derby at 31-1 with Charismatic, a horse I never even thought about before the race, and he damn near won the Triple Crown with him. But, yeah, I just think toward the end it was clear he wanted to be there. He wanted to be around it. As he said, he just loved the competition. And the fact that, it looked like he was never going to win another big race. It really did. He was down to just about nothing. And then he won the Kentucky Oaks with a filly named Secret Oath in 2022. Mm-hmm. And then he comes back and wins the Preakness at 88 years old last year. That'll be one record I can guarantee you will never be topped. Nobody's winning a Triple Crown race at 88 again. Right. And I remember when I wrote my story, I said, and I mentioned it earlier, he won his first one at 44, his last one at 88.
That's amazing.
44 years between. And the Kentucky Oaks was similar. He won his first one 40 years before he won his last one.
Last one. Bob Baffert's won a couple of Triple Crowns. Lukas, I think, won 15 of the Triple Crown races, but obviously not the Triple Crown. Did it ever bother him that he never got a Triple Crown winner?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'm sure somebody asked it. I never did. The fact that he did win the 6 in a row, so he won a Preakness, a Belmont. He actually won a Triple Crown one year, but with two different horses.
Right, exactly.
He won all three in 1995, and then he won the Derby again in 96. That's kind of an accomplishment that's impossible to top. But, yeah, it probably did because, look, he was Mr. Triple Crown. And then this guy, who basically followed the path and emulated Wayne in just about every way, quarter horses, thoroughbreds in California. And Bob, his first Derby was 96 with a horse called Cavanier, who lost by a nose to Grindstone. Yes. And that was Lukas. Lukas beat Baffert by a nose, and I remember Baffert after the race said, I'll never win this race again. I'll never win this race. Well, he won the next two, and he's won more than anybody. So, yes, Wayne has won 15 Triple Crown races. Baffert's won 17. And they were big rivals. Big rivals in California. Last 15 years, they're best friends. And when Baffert had all his troubles the last couple of years, the one person in horse racing who went out of his way to defend Baffert was Wayne Lukas.
Says it all. That says it all. Okay, when you've got that, that tells you everything about the quality of the man. My friend, always a pleasure. Great article, and obviously it was about one of the true greats in the history of the sport.
No question. Yeah, and he transcended horse racing. People knew him. You didn't have to be in horse racing. You knew who D. Wayne was. There's no doubt.
That's exactly right. DJ, thanks so much.
You got it. Thanks, Steve.
The great Dick Jerardi talking about the legendary D. Wayne Lukas, who passed away over the weekend at the age of 89. This half hour brought to you by our good friends at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks, or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Visit USAA.com/bundle. Bundle savings are off total premium, not available in all states or in all situations. To qualify, auto policy must be active prior to property policy issue, subject to change. Restrictions apply. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
And a half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV. Do a great job of taking care of all of your insurance needs. And not only that, but not just a great job of taking care of all your insurance needs, but they do everything they can to save you money because customer service means everything to them at Purdy Insurance. Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. All right. So let's give credit where credit's due because nobody else is going to give them credit. And that is what the Pirates did over the weekend. The Pirates outscored the Mets 30-4. Now, all the stories this afternoon are going to be about what's wrong with the Mets. Because, again, despite I thought media would mature over time. And when I mean mature over time, in other words, the ability to make national sports. And they haven't been able to do it. It's still about New York and Los Angeles. The Lakers, then lose the opening round by 5 games. Now what do we talk about? New York. Pirates just went out and just beat the living daylights out of them baseball-wise over the weekend. Outscored them 30-4. 30-4. That's a tribute to the Pirates. Yeah, that's a tribute to the Pirates. Now, if you're a New York paper, you justifiably, if you're a New York paper or a New York entity, you are going to talk about what's wrong with the Pirates. That I understand completely. Okay, I got that part. But everybody else, I mean, it's got to be credit to the team that went out and did the job. And the Pirates did the job. Let's give credit where credit's due. Now the Phillies are up by 1.5 games in the East because of this.
The Pirates have we've talked enough about the Pirates all year, but the Pirates also have swept the Mets and the Phillies. Baseball's a funny game.
Yeah, but they're playing much better baseball to the credit since Don Kelly took over as the manager. And I'm not putting down Derek Shelton. I'm just saying that, that since the change was made, they've been playing better. And their starting pitching, for the most part, has been pretty good. And it's not just Paul Skeens. The other guys, the other starting pitchers, have pitched pretty well. And so the problem for them, the primary problem most of the season has been their hitting. Well, they scored 30 runs in 3 games. Hitting's not that bad. So I just want to make sure they got credit where credit's due. In other words, if we're going to sit there and criticize the organization or criticize the team, when they are doing well and doing something right, we also want to be one of the first ones to step up and say, hey, look, give them credit. They're doing something right. I mean, that's called fairness. You just can't always be negative about something. When something positive happens, you have to step up and say something positive too. That's that way you're giving everybody both sides when it's deserved, when it's earned. Meanwhile, the Steelers made two trades and they rolled them into one. Okay. And that is picking up Jalen Ramsey, by the way, from the Dolphins as part of this. As you know, I am not and have never been a big Jalen Ramsey guy. And people act like he's some Hall of Fame corner. I'm like, he's very good, but he's not that good. He's been made out to be that good, but he's not that good. He's in the Hall of Very Good. But he's been traded from the Dolphins along with tight end Jonnu Smith. And the Jonnu Smith part makes sense. We'll explain that in a second. In exchange for Mikah Fitzpatrick and then picks, and all the picks involved are 2027 picks. The Dolphins will send a 7th-round 2027 pick to the Steelers. The Steelers will send a 2027 5th-round pick back to Miami. So Fitzpatrick began his career with the Dolphins. And it's an interesting corner group now for the Steelers because they have Joey Porter Jr., they picked up Darius Slay in free agency, and now they get Ramsey. Now, I realize that Ramsey he's so heralded. But in an era where they throw the football a lot, he has 24 career interceptions. For a slice of perspective, in an era where they didn't throw the ball a lot, Jack Ham, a linebacker, at 32. Just thought I'd mention it. Throw the ball a lot in this era, and don't tell me they're not throwing at him. I watched the Super Bowl where the Bengals threw a lot at him. Now, as for Jonnu Smith, and again, you need to have the 3 corners. So that's not, the Steelers can play all 3 at the same time. It's just I don't know who's going to play the slot corner. It could be Ramsey. But as for Jonnu Smith, it makes complete sense because he's the guy that the Steelers have been talking about for a while. Why? Because Arthur Smith had him with Atlanta, and Arthur Smith had him in Tennessee. So Arthur Smith obviously thinks he's terrific. And not only that, but this guy last year as a tight end had 88 receptions. Okay. And in terms of receiving yards, 884. Only Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, and George Kittle had more yards than a tight end than he did.
None of this makes any sense to me whatsoever.
It's not supposed to. It's an NFL trade.
I know, but you're paying all that. You're paying all that money to Pat to spend even more money at that position. Not to say that it won't work, but
well, I think what we're going to see is this. I think the Steelers are going to run. I'm a big believer in you put your 4 best receivers out there, and it doesn't mean they're all wide receivers.
He's an awful run blocker.
Yeah, I understand that.
I mean, this is. I guess if they're going to play a little differently than they have been, I mean, they're going to have to throw the ball a lot more. If both those tight ends are out there, because the blocking is not going to be great for the running game. Right. And then I get Mike Fitzpatrick. I mean, even from the Dolphins' end, I mean, now they don't have a tight end, and they're getting a safety in a trade that hasn't played well since 2022 probably.
You're so negative.
I know it's a challenge trade for both teams. I get it, but
just so you know that one of the guys the Dolphins signed in the offseason was Artie Burns. Mentioned many times on this show.
I was going to say, when you have a chance to get that part of the Steelers secondary, how can you resist?
I mean, really, you feel better now about life knowing that Artie Burns is now.
I mean, I did see somebody say, and I think Neil retweeted it, that this is more from the Pittsburgh side. This is more of an indictment of Micah than anything, and how dissatisfied they were in Micah.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, because Mikah Fitzpatrick came over, and he, for the first year he was really good. The first year Mikah Fitzpatrick was outstanding with the Steelers. After that, I kind of felt like he fell off. Big name, not a lot of big production.
Kind of sounds like Jalen Ramsey at this point.
And again, Jalen Ramsey, I feel the same way about. I've never been a big Jalen Ramsey guy. In other words, and not because I don't think he's talented. I do think he's talented. But I think he gets way more credit than he has earned. He's an excellent athlete, and he does have a Super Bowl ring, which we can debate whether how much he helped. But
every move they make, I always go back. I mean, they have two choices. They have to get a top 5 or top 8 pick next year, or you have to be better than the Chiefs, the Bills, or the Ravens.
Right, and they're not.
They're still stuck in that middle.
Oh no, they're making moves, and they're making moves that keep you stuck in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, everything works out perfectly. I mean, the best, maybe 12 wins. But does that win the Central? Or the North, whatever the heck it is now?
It's the North.
The North.
The North. No. I mean, they are not as talented as the Ravens on both sides of the ball. They are not as talented as the Bengals on the offensive side of the ball. Defense. Bengals could have a lot of 37-34 games. But that is what I find to be intriguing about all this. Is I agree with you. It feels like they're making moves, trying to change up a mix on the team somewhere, but I feel like they're taking darts, and with the lights down in the room, they're trying to throw it and hit the dartboard.
Which I was going to say, which is the antithesis of what the Steelers have been my entire life.
They've been 180 of that. They've been the franchise of incredible stability. But you also are now in a spot, and this all began when Ben Roethlisberger inevitably, Father Time is undefeated. We've tried to tell the suit that. And and as time was going, he'd slip a little bit more, but was still good enough to help them win games. And even at the end, he still did things well enough that could potentially help them win games. And that was always the amazing part about Ben Roethlisberger. And so now here we are, and they've been running through quarterbacks. They've been trying to make up for it on the defensive side of the ball. And the whole thing has been Atlantic hawkish.
And I do wonder if the issue is finding the next Roethlisberger, where you have it in your head that he has to be this certain type, where you're just not looking for the best, your best quarterback.
Well, first of all, they haven't been in a position to draft that guy because of where they've been finishing. They thought they had it when they took the shot on Kenny Pickett. And, and they didn't have the right evaluation on him. And I was surprised they took him, but that was just me. Because I did what did I do? 3 Kenny Pickett games in my career? And I was like, okay, I thought he was good. But, geez, I've done first-round draft picks and so forth and watched them play in the course of my career. You know what one looks like. And he didn't give me that feeling. How about that? Now, every year tells you, something different because everybody's looking for a quarterback in the first round, if they can. But that was the guy I think they were hoping and pinning their hopes on that would be the guy. And it hasn't worked out for them. They have not been able to find that guy. So now they go through, okay, let's try Mitchell Trubisky. Didn't quite work. Let's try Justin Fields. Didn't quite work. Let's try Russell Wilson. Didn't quite work. Now they're going to try Aaron Rodgers for a year. That's where they are. And this is where you have to get fortunate. Everybody can jump up and down about how he's a genius. I got it. Because when the move works out, you're a genius. But they drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round. They lucked out. You have to have luck when that happens. Okay? And they ended up with a terrific player. Legitimately outstanding player, a Super Bowl champion. You're sitting there in the 2020 draft, and you pick him in the second round. Okay. And now look what happened. And when you look at with the Eagles picking in 2020, okay? If they were so sure about Jalen Hurts, why wasn't he the 21st pick instead of 53? And don't tell me, how he fleeced everybody. No, explain to me why, if he was the guy that they really thought was going to be the guy, how come he wasn't 21?
You assume everybody else evaluates him in the second round as well, and you have another person there to go with.
Yeah, they went with Jalen Reagor.
Well, yeah, I mean, they never bring that up when they have the Howie's the genius talk, do they?
Right. I mean, Jalen Reagor was their first round pick. Justin Jefferson was still on the board. They didn't take him. Now I could see if they took Justin Jefferson, then you take Hurts in round 2. I mean, look. 52 picks go by, they finally picked him. Well, credit to Howie Roseman for picking him in round 2. But if they were my point is, if they were so sure he was their next starting quarterback, why didn't you pick him at 21? You have to get lucky sometimes. You have to get lucky. Dak Prescott was a 4th-round pick. Okay, you have to get lucky. And Brock Purdy was the last guy picked. What do you think, the 49ers picked him and went, I think he's going to be our starter? When the Eagles drafted him, he wasn't going to be their starter. But then you luck out. So there are moments where there's sometimes bad luck with a guy, bad pick, Jalen Reagor, and then you get a great pick in Jalen Hurts. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it falls that way. Well, for the Steelers, they haven't had anything in quarterback-wise. They picked Kenny Pickett 20th overall or somewhere in that neighborhood, and he didn't pan out. He was the ACC Player of the Year. A lot of people loved him. But didn't pan out. Now he's a backup with the Browns. So, I mean, it's some of it is like, you look at Elway, you think, hey, he's going to be a star, he was. You look at Marino, you thought he was going to be a star, he was. You look at, but part of this stuff is translating your game from college to the pros. That is not easy. That's a hard evaluation. As Bill O'Brien told me, high school to college is a gigantic leap. He said college to the pros is a chasm. All right. No chasm here. We'll take a break because we are contractually obligated to here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The Beverage Supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
What car dealer just announced 0% financing? It's Sunbury Motors Hyundai. That's right, now through the end of the month, get as low as 0% financing on 2025 Hyundai Santa Fe's. And there's 15 in stock. Get your third-row Santa Fe today for 0% financing for 60 months. That's not all. Drive away in a 2025 Hyundai Elantra for as low as $292 a month. And get this, there's 31 to choose from. How about saving up to $2,250 off a 2025 Hyundai Tucson or Palisade? Tucson start at just $30,155, and Palisades are as low as $44,964, with an additional $1,000 sales event cash off on calligraphy and calligraphy night trims. With all this and the just announced 0% financing for 60 months on 2025 Hyundai Santa Fe's, you can't afford to wait. Hurry in to Sunbury Motors Hyundai in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury.
Elantra lease is for well-qualified buyers. 10,000 miles a year, 3 years, $3,000 due at signing. For more details, see dealer or go to sunburyhyundai.com.